we move on. We move on to the NFC West now. Probably one of the strongest divisions in the NFL. Definitely one of the most entertaining ones to watch this season. Anyone's game, full of talent. So this is going to be an interesting one, Adam. We'll start off with the LA Rams, a team that is already very, very young. Got bags and bags of talent at offense and defense now. Where are the holes, though, Adam?
I would say defense is the hole, and predominantly at corner. I think that corner needs a very big upgrade to it, and that's definitely, whether that's a case of going for it in free agency or in the draft, I don't know. I don't think. Let me just quickly check. No, they haven't got a lot of money. They're pretty short when it comes to next year. So I think you're going to be looking at the draft. The front seven look great. I think they've been brilliant. I think that Kobe Turner's great. Byron Young's great. Brandon Frisk, great. Jared Verse, your guy, brilliant. You know, all these guys look really, really good. The back, the corners, the safeties have kind of been where they've been hit a lot and going over the top. They really need to improve that. So yeah, that's kind of, it needs a big upgrade. And offensively, to be honest, there's not a lot that they need to change offensively. It's really going to be about whether Cooper Kupp carries on. I mean, he's signed up to. I think he probably will. Puka obviously is there. They've got some depth in Jordan Whittington has looked good, and Demarcus Robinson, Tutu Atwell. You know, they've got lots of names there. O-line, you could always do with a bit of extra O-line help. So it wouldn't surprise me whether they go maybe a little bit later in the draft on O-line. But really, I think it's all going to be about the corner and safety and just trying to improve in that particular department, because they are a team that are better than what their record is showing at the moment, and I think that you'll probably find that they're not far off. They're certainly a playoff caliber team. They're not far away from going the whole way again, and so I think that it is very much about shoring up that secondary.
Yeah, I think what is interesting to say with the Rams as well, they can go all offense again early in the draft, because what we've seen from them is Sean McVay definitely knows how to find offensive talent later in the draft, or he definitely knows how to get the best out of talent later in the draft. So he doesn't look like he ever needs to go early on some of the offensive players. When you've got Puka, who's already number one, when you're looking for a number two, you know, if it's a tight end they might be looking for in the future, or offensive line. I just think that McVay's got the ability to get the best out of later round players, so he can go ham on superstar defenders, which you might not know how to get the best out of them. You know, his coordinator changes quite a bit. So I think, yeah, definitely going corner. It would be very, very sensible and get that talent later on. So they're in a fantastic position to set themselves up. I think they're currently sat in the draft. They're currently sat at 16. I can't even see them being 16 though. I think they're going to be a bit further down towards that 20 mark, aren't they? By the end.
Yeah, you would think so. It would be surprising if they stayed right in the middle. I would have thought they'd be a lot closer to that. And you know, I mean, they do have the, you know, all their guys are getting fit at the moment. You know, so it does kind of feel very much that they've got the opportunity. They're not far away from the Cardinals, so they could go and take this division. So they might go quite a bit further up the draft board there, but. Yeah, it's secondary is the main area.
Yeah, which I'm sure they'll be able to address. I think there's a lot of really, really talented safeties, and there's a handful of good corners. I think if you wanted a corner, it was last year. If you want a safety, it's this year. So they might get the pick of one of the top corners based if they are around that 20 to 25 mark. They'll probably still get one of them. So I think there's just that much talent above the corners that they could get their pick of the best one. I'm not going to get Will Johnson. He's going to be at the top, isn't he? So
yeah.
But outside of that, there's chance for them to get the next best one. So I think they're setting themselves up for the future very, very well, considering it was a team that gave up all of their draft capital to go in on the Super Bowl not that long ago. They've come out of this very, very, very well with very talented youngsters. We move on to the San Francisco 49ers, a team that I feel personally is an aging team. I feel like, they've got a lot of old, very, very talented pieces, and there's got to be that transition period where they start to draft in some new blood and get them going to keep this alive there. They don't want to have to fall away from this Super Bowl window and then rebuild again and then start all over again. I think they need to try and keep the momentum going each year. Adam, where are the holes for them and how do they keep that going?
I think it's going to be difficult for them to be able to keep it going. I think they're starting to struggle. You're almost sort of seeing a little bit of the end, aren't you, already, with the likes of McCaffrey having the injury he had and things like that. But if the theory is that you're going to keep McCaffrey, you're going to keep Kittle, you're going to keep Brandon Ayuk, who's signed, and Debo, you're going to keep all these guys. Offensively, there's not a great deal that you need to really look at apart from the O-line. It kind of feels like that's where you need depth. I think Trent Williams has been great, and to be honest, everything else needs a bit of an upgrade, I would argue, on the O-line. I don't think that Dominic Pooney has been particularly fantastic as the rookie, I think. But yeah, I mean, just generally offensively, I think they need some O-line help. But that's not really their main issue. I think again, ironically, the same as the Rams, I think their main issue is going to be corner. Lenore and Charvarius Ward are both free agents at the end of this season. So that's something that they're going to need to look at. But then just generally, I think they need a bit more as well from their corners. I don't think they've been particularly fantastic this season. And so, yeah, I think that's the main area they need to go for. The front seven, I think, are pretty good, to be honest. I think they've been all right. Nick Bosa has been Nick Bosa, and then they've got the likes of Fred Warner and Leonard Floyd there. I mean, you could look at maybe trying to get younger. As you say, this is a very aging team now, and that defense they are all getting a bit older, so you could go down that route just to get a bit younger. But the big need, I think, is corner. That's what they really need help at.
Yeah. Brock Purdy, obviously drafted in 2022. There's going to be a lot of chats, I think, in the offseason about signing him to a new contract. Do you think that this is the right decision for them to do this year? Because he signed a 4-year deal. Obviously, there's still another year left. Or do you think they get it tied up and secured before inflation happens the following year? Because it's inevitable that they're going to sign him. It's not as if they're going to let him go. So do you see it getting done this off season? And if so, what's the impact of that to them?
I think if you as you say, it's obvious that they're going to sign him. They're very much with him now, and it feels like that they have to go down that route. Because of that, if you're in that sort of mindset, I think you have to do it. Like, you have to get it done as quickly as possible, because otherwise, if you don't, you're going to end up just paying for it, aren't you, down the line? This is kind of, we were talking about the Cowboys earlier. This is kind of what we've seen. The dithering a little bit has caused the problems for them to not really be able to get anywhere and cause problems for themselves. And so, yeah, I think given the age of a lot of these guys as well around him, I think you've got to go for it. And it kind of almost feels like you have to do it before it's too late. So I think it's definitely the way forward is to do it.
Yeah, with that in mind, I think for me, you might be in agreement as well, that cornerback is where you go for in free agency, and then O-line for me is where they hit up in the draft. I think when you think about the 49ers and how they play, it doesn't matter who the quarterback is or who the running back is at the minute. as long as the O-line is good, you'll get really good production out of both of those players. We've seen, I don't know, maybe over the last 2 years, even you've seen, I reckon, 6 running backs play at a high level for the 49ers, and some of them have gone elsewhere to different teams, but it does look like if they get that O-line sorted, their run game will always be good, and Purdy then, who's your future, will be protected. So I think drafting O-line and free agency for cornerback, Adam, do you think that's the right decision?
Yeah, I mean, it probably is. Like I say, they're kind of the two areas, O-line for the depth and just, like I say, Trent Williams. And to be honest, who else is there that's really putting in a great performance this season? Not really. So you kind of want to improve at the O-line. That makes sense. Corner, obviously, we've spoken about. So, yeah, it's just, I think really it's about where you feel like you're going to get your best players in the right spot, sort of thing. You know, do you feel that you're going to be able to get a great O-line guy in round one? If not, then you're going to have to go out and buy one. You know, it's that simple. So I think they've put themselves in a position where there's only a couple of problems, so it's not too difficult for them to work it out.
I think that's good enough tackles. I think a guy that definitely will be towards the back end of the first. I think Cam Williams from Texas. I think he'll definitely be one on their radar is the back end of the first. So there's a couple. I think Emory Jones is another one that people have got back end of the first, a very high level talent. He's more of a right tackle than left tackle, but definitely some guys, fantastic talent that they can get if they want tackle. The interior, if they go in interior, they'll probably get pick of the best interior lineman if they wanted. For me, obviously, you know, I'm very, very biased when it comes to players. So Donovan Jackson from Ohio State for me, but I'm sure there's people who've got different names in that slot. But yeah, I think definitely plenty of room for them to just take their pick of who they want. We move on to the Arizona Cardinals. You said before the season started, you won't be betting on this team because, you know, they're going to be very, very fun to watch, but you won't want to put your money on it. And funny enough, deadly accurate. They are very, very fun to watch. But what you get from them week to week is very hit and miss. So there's definitely some holes in this team. How do you make sure they're not hit and miss and it's great every week? What are the positions they can solidify to make that happen?
So when it came to the Cardinals and looking at it, it feels like offensively they're going to have to stick with the weapons they have. I feel like, you know, obviously they've invested in Marvin Harrison, but I feel like Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch have been okay for them. I mean, too bad you keep them.
You've got a wide receiver one.
Yeah, exactly. So they're not awful.
Yeah.
You're not going to have them as you're coming out and say they're the best 3 wide receivers in the league, but they're not awful. So that's okay. Trey McBride, obviously fine. Tight ends fine. Running back room. Trey Benson has looked good when he's come out. I think he's done all right. James Conner is going to be a free agent, I believe. So it depends whether they decide to go there. Yeah, it will be a big loss. But I think Benson, it feels like from what I've seen of Benson, it feels like a very similar styled running back. And I think the idea is to try and bring him in. So they might go for a running back if they do end up losing James Conner just for some depth more than anything else. I think the O-line could do with a bit of help. Jonah Williams is on a 2-year deal, but he's always hurt. So that's a problem. And, you know, they've got Calvin Beecham, their starting right tackle. He's 35. So I do feel like O-line probably needs a bit of help. And then, this isn't like, I'm not going to come out and say a specific position here because you don't need a specific position. Anything on the defense, genuinely anything would help, because the reason that they are struggling to sort of like win games and not be, you know, the reason they are exciting and they're not boring is because their defense cannot stop anything. And that's where the issue comes in. They have got a few that have been all right. I think Roy Lopez has been pretty good at nose tackle. I think he's done all right. They've just traded in Baron Browning, who I think has been pretty good at his time at the Broncos. So I don't mind him. And obviously Buda Baker is a quality player. Yeah, that's about it. I genuinely think you could go anywhere.
I think outside of Lopez, they haven't got any interior
No.
like defensive linemen. So I think that's definitely got to be where they go in the draft, surely. I do believe that they're going to have loads of salary cap, aren't they? They're one of the teams that can literally go out and splurge and
Yeah, I'm pretty.
go
Yeah,
buy
so
some.
currently for 2025, they're going to have 103 million to
Mm.
spend, so they can go for it a bit on that. And yeah, and I think it is literally anywhere you like. There is no specific area that you need to look at. I think you need to look at everything on the defense.
I think they're going to be in a solid position in the draft to get possibly they might be able to go out and get themselves a Kenneth Grant in the draft, where they might be drafting, who is an exceptional talent from Michigan. He's going to be one of the people are going to be after him and want him. I think they could go out and get him, and then they could go out and splurge and buy themselves a right tackle. They could go and buy. They could, if they wanted to, go and buy themselves another high end wide receiver, couldn't they? You know, there's going to be some big names available to be a wide receiver too. You know, you'd like T. Higgins and Chris Godwin, who were absolutely fantastic wide receiver twos. They're going to be available as well. This team has the ability now. It's got its quarterback, it's got its wide receiver one, it's got a very talented young tight end, and I think running back, they'll be fine with Trey Benson. They invested in him last year, so I think they do have the ability to do what we said like before, like Texans did, and go out and just buy a load of players to just strengthen this. So I think they're going to be in a good position. I think moving forward, again, I said that this season this has been an exciting division. It's going to be exciting next year as well. You know, they're all of them sound like they're going to improve again. It's just whether the older players at San Fran can keep up with the young talent that's coming in on for the other two. But yeah, they've definitely put themselves in a position. They're playing some nice football. It's just a bit erratic. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. Keep an eye on this division. The last team we need to look at is the Seattle Seahawks. Again, I don't see many holes in this team. I think, you know, they've got really nice pieces everywhere on defense and offense. They've got, I think, probably one of the top trios of wide receivers you can have as well. So and two exceptional running backs too, and Walker and Charbonnet. So is it defense they need to focus on? Is it quarterback that's the issue? Why is this team that has a very talented roster not quite pushing ahead of these others?
Yeah, they've been a strange one, haven't they? I've said a few times this season, they beat the easy teams and they struggle against the better ones. I feel like they're just not quite there at the moment. I think that they are on the offense. I think they're with obviously the wide receivers are decent and in a good spot. Running back's good. A lot of people talk about Geno Smith, about replacing him. I just don't.
When do you
It's
do it?
difficult.
When,
Yeah, I
because
feel like it's too early.
they're never going to be in a position, I don't think, looking at their roster, to be moving up a board to get someone or waiting. So maybe this year is the
Yeah.
year to bring in someone that we've said there's a few guys that you can bring in, and they might want to sit behind Geno Smith for a full year. So this could be the year that they do it, because Geno Smith has been, I think he's the one that's not pushing them to the next level. I think, like you say, he wins the easy games, and then some decision making down in the red zone in some very pinnacle games this year is what's let them down.
Yeah, I think maybe it's worth having a look and going for someone. I just don't think it's worth going for it early in the draft. I think it would just be a mistake doing that. But yeah, I think later on I could understand why they would go down that route. They might go tight end because there is an out in Fant's contract, so they may decide to go down that route. And tight end is meant to be good this year. I think that the O-line could do with a bit of help. Just feels a bit thin more than anything else. Just to be honest, I think I could say that for pretty much every single team, that they could do O-line help. So I think that they might go down that route as well. And then I do think linebacker on the defense is where they need to have a look. Jerome Baker is a free agent. And I just think that Mike McDonald is going to be looking for his Roquan Smith. I feel like that he had the Ravens. I think that he's going to want to go down that route and try and find someone like that. But they're a solid team. Like, the whole team is a solid team. They just need to get a few sort of like star pieces in order to be able to push them that little bit further along. And I think, ironically, it's not so much in the sort of starry type positions. I think they've got the guys at wide receiver. They've got the guy at running back. Yes, you could argue they need to improve at quarterback, but it's going to be difficult to get a really good one. I think at corner they look good. I think that Witherspoon has looked good. I think Woolen's been good.
Duo, haven't they?
They look decent at corner. At linebacker, they look okay. Everything's okay. Nothing is amazing. And I think that's where the problem is. And that's where they need to bring in just a couple of guys that are a bit more sort of like bit better and a bit more amazing, that's going to push them on. And yeah, I think if McDonald can find his linebacker, can find that Roquan Smith, I think that will make a huge difference for him.
Yeah, it's linebacker's never going to be a position that you go for round one in the draft. I don't think
No, absolutely.
this year.
I don't know what you really go for round one with this team, to be brutally honest, because there isn't anyone that you desperately need to replace.
This is what I was alluding to. You know, they've got Charles Cross, they've got Abraham Lucas, who both very, very young right and left tackles. Like I say, the corners are all solid. They spent a bit of money on the D line, obviously Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy, Derek Hall and Bo Maffei are both talented players as well. It isn't. There's not a desperate need, is there? If it is tight end that goes, then maybe tight end's where they go in the draft. Strengthen up that, because it looks like Tyler Lockett might not be there next year. I know there was talk of them trading DK Metcalf at one point, but they'll get value for him. But I think that would be the detriment. I think we have seen enough from Jackson Smith and Jigba over the last few games that makes you say, yeah, he's the future. But maybe taking your pick of some talented tight ends in the draft, or like I say, maybe it is the year you take a gamble on a quarterback when you don't need, you can use the rest of the draft to fill these holes that you're on about on depth at O-line, few more linebackers, and you'll be sorted. So it's going to be interesting to see where they go. I'm glad we're on the same page that this team is solid, but not really producing the goods. So
it's a weird team in a bit of an odd situation at the moment, where it's a very solid team, but just not really pushing themselves far enough to really get to that next bit. But yeah, they are a good team. Maybe, like you say, it is time for a gamble at quarterback, but they don't have any real issues that you would say are glaringly obvious.
Well, that's the West